students, I welcome you all back to this platform once again. I'm your teacher Shyam Panchal and I'm going to give you this lecture on behalf of Takshila Model Senior Secondary School. So students, the chapter that we are going to discuss today has been taken from class 9 book Moments, and this is the chapter number 2, and the title of the chapter is The Adventures of Toto. So students, before we move on to the explanation of the chapter, let us just take a look at the title of the chapter, The Adventures of Toto. Before we understand the title, let us just take a look at the word Toto. If we are able to understand who this word Toto stands for, we can understand the title as well. So the word Toto actually stands for a monkey that the narrator's grandfather bought for a sum of ₹5. So here, students, as we know that all the monkeys are very mischievous by nature. This is a tendency of the monkeys to make mischiefs, to be very naughty, right? So similarly here in this chapter, this Toto, the monkey, is very mischievous, and hence he has done many adventures all throughout this chapter. So we'll come to know about the adventures that he has made. So students, secondly, we have the author's corner and the Ruskin Bond, and Ruskin Bond is the author of this chapter. Ruskin Bond, who was a 20th century Indian writer with British descent. He was actually born in 1934, and the most interesting thing about the author Ruskin Bond is that he has written many of his works for children, and especially many of his works have been included in the academics, especially for the children, right? And he is also living in present day. He's alive and he lives in Missouri, India. So students, in the present chapter, we are going to read about a monkey, Toto. So students, let me just give you a brief outline of the chapter. Toto is a monkey. Narrator's grandfather bought this little monkey, Toto, and he kept this monkey in his private zoo. Narrator's grandfather was actually very fond of taming animals and birds. He had a private zoo. So when he added this monkey in his private zoo, at first he thought that Toto will be very friendly with other animals, but later on it turned out that Toto was very mischievous and he did not allow other animals live peacefully, right? And once it happened that the grandfather had to go to Saharanpur to collect his pension, he brought Toto with him. He packed Toto in a big black canvas kit bag, and when grandfather was about to show his tickets to the ticket collector, it was Toto who just poked his head out of the bag, and grandfather had to pay an extra ₹3 for Toto as well as a fare, right? And later on, there was a great incident that would have killed Toto alive. Actually, there was a pot in which water was boiling, and Toto was in the habit of bathing in hot water, especially warm water, and he did not just understand what he should do, and he just got into that vessel in that pot, and he would have just once Toto would have boiled himself alive. And at the end of the chapter, we came to know that Toto was so mischievous that he broke many dishes, and he also took the ball of pulao and went up the tree, right? And he threw a glass at one of the narrator's aunts, right? So finally, it was decided that Toto was not at all a friendly monkey, and that is why it was decided that he must be taken away to the place where he was brought back. Where was he was brought? So students, now let us move on to the discussion of the chapter. Like the previous chapters I have explained, here I have written few points points to be discussed, but this time I have not written any points, so I'm going to explain this chapter here. The important things I will be writing on the board. So students, it is in the beginning of the chapter we are told that Toto was a very pretty monkey. The narrator's grandfather bought Toto for a sum of ₹5 from a Tonga driver. A Tonga driver, the Tonga driver who used to keep Toto tied to a feeding trough. Feeding trough, students here, feeding trough is a word. Trough is actually a big utensil, a big container for water or food, especially for animals, right? So the Tonga driver used to keep Toto tied to a feeding trough. When grandfather saw Tricky, so students, let us now move on to the explanation of the chapter. Like the previous chapters that I have explained here, I have always written few points to be discussed, but this time I'm not going to write anything like that, and even I have not written the words beforehand. So I will be explaining each and everything to you, and I'm just going to give you a detailed explanation of the part number 1. Right. So students, it is in the beginning of the chapter we are told that Toto is a very pretty monkey. Is a very pretty monkey. Right. It is in the beginning of the chapter we are told that it was the narrator's grandfather who bought Toto for a sum of ₹5 from a Tonga driver. Right. The Tonga driver used to keep Toto tied to a feeding trough. What is a feeding trough, students? A feeding trough is a big container for food or water, right? Especially for animals. So the Tonga driver used to keep Toto tied to a feeding trough. When grandfather took a look at this little red monkey, grandfather found Toto so out of place that he decided at that very moment that he would bring Toto with him, and he would join Toto. He would add Toto to his private zoo. So students, let me here tell you that narrator's grandfather was actually very fond of keeping animals and birds, and he had a private zoo also of his own, and in that private zoo there were many animals that the grandfather had already tamed, right? So when grandfather saw Toto, he found Toto very out of place, quite out of place there, and then he decided that he would just buy Toto and he would bring him and add him to his private zoo. And for how much did grandfather buy Toto? He bought Toto for a sum of ₹5, and from where? From a Tonga driver, right? So it is in the next paragraph of this chapter we come to know that Toto was a very pretty monkey. How was he actually very pretty? There is a very detailed description of Toto has been given in this paragraph. So Toto is a very pretty monkey. For the first reason, Toto was very pretty. The first reason that is given in the chapter is that his bright eyes sparkled with mischief beneath his deep set eyebrows. His bright eyes means Toto had very bright eyes, and in those bright eyes there was a certain glimpse of what? Mischief, right? So mischief was quite visible in his eyes. Secondly, Toto had very white teeth, so he had pearly teeth which were visible in a smile, and these white teeth, which were compared to the white pearls, had the capability of frightening people. Whenever he just smiled, so his white pearly teeth were visible and they were quite frightening. People would just get frightened to see Toto whenever he was just giving a smile, or he was just giving a grin. A grin is also a smile, right? So students, the third thing about Toto that made him a pretty monkey were his hands. His hands, which looked, his hands which looked uh, very dry, so dry, as though they had been pickled in the sun for many years. Means his hands were so dry or as dry as the pickle looks. Pickle is an eatable that we eat at our homes, right? So before we just have pickle prepared, we just put the pickle into the sun to get baked. Similarly, Toto's hands were so hard, so rough, uh, so tough, as though they had been pickled in the sun for many years. And next thing about Toto uh, were his fingers. His fingers were very sharp and were very wicked. Here the author has called Toto's fingers very wicked. Wicked here means Toto's fingers never stood still. They never stayed still. He always used to keep doing something. He always used to fiddle with something with his fingers. That is why his fingers have been referred to as wicked, right? And next, grandfather talks about Toto's tail. Grandfather believes that tail of animals actually add to their looks. Means they the tails of animals make the animals look presentable. And the second reason that made Toto a very uh, beautiful animal was that Toto could use his tail as a third hand. Uh, third hand. Then the next point is Toto's tail. Students' grandfather believed that an animal's tail always adds to its good looks, right? But in case of Toto, this third tail also served as a third hand. How how did it actually serve as a third hand? Because Toto used this tail to hang from the branches of tree, and he also used this tail to scoop the delicacies which were out of his reach. Scoop, students, here means to pick or to pluck. Delicacies. Delicacies means delicious fruits. So he used to scoop the delicacies, the delicious fruits. He used to pluck the delicious fruits which were quite uh, out of his reach. So students, here we have just a detailed description of the monkey Toto. Now, Toto's presence was kept a secret from grandmother for few days, especially until grandmother's mood was quite good. It was done because grandmother did not welcome the animals that grandfather used to bring to his private zoo, right? So, students, when Toto was just brought to the grandfather's private zoo, Toto was first of all kept uh, in the narrator's room, uh, in into one of the openings of the narrator's wall. It was a small closet, a small room, right? And Toto was just tied there. He was just kept there. And after few hours, when the narrator and his grandfather came back to release Toto from that place, they found that Toto had just uh, troubled everything. He just destroyed everything in that small closet, in that small room. So what were the things that Toto had done? First of all, Toto had just scraped. He had just broken all the plaster from the wall, and he had just torn all the decorated paper which was just set up by the grandfather in that small closet, right? And he had also uh, wrenched the nail to which Toto was fastened, right? There was the narrator's school blazer which was also torn into shreds by little monkey. And why monkey did this? He did this to get himself uh, free, right? So though narrator was not happy with whatever the little monkey Toto did, but grandfather was quite happy. He was quite amused at the little monkey's performance, right? Grandfather here quite amusingly uh, exclaims something. He says that if he had been given some more time, he would have done what? He would have just made a rope out of the shreds of the blazer, and he would just have made an escape from the window, right? So this is just an assumption, this is just an estimation that grandfather made about Toto. So grandfather was quite happy. He was happy because he now understood that Toto was quite intelligent. He was very clever monkey, right? So now students, in this chapter we come to know that narrator here now tells us that once narrator's grandfather had uh, to go to Saharanpur. Why did he have to go to Saharanpur? He had to go to Saharanpur because he had to collect his pension. So he had to go to Dehradun. So students, before this, Toto was actually uh, transferred to a big cage which was placed in the servants' quarter, right? And there were some other animals also who used to live there sociably together, right? There were some other animals. But what happened? Toto's progress with other animals, Toto's behavior with the other animals was not also fair. He did what? He did not let the other animals sleep at night, right? And some of the animals have also been mentioned in this paragraph here. Uh, there was a tortoise, there were a pair of rabbits, there was a tame squirrel, right? And there was the narrator's pet goat, right? So Toto was not very friendly with the other animals, and he did not let the other animals sleep at night. So keeping all these things in mind, grandfather finally decided that if he had to go to Saharanpur to collect his pension, he would just take Toto. Sorry, he would just take Toto with him. And the narrator here says that he could not actually go with his grandfather, and he feels quite bad about it. He just regrets this, right? So he could not go with his grandfather. But later on, his grandfather told him what actually happened at the Dehradun railway station. What happened there? When the first of all, narrator's grandfather made arrangements to transport Toto, to take Toto with him to uh, Saharanpur, right? He did what? First of all, he made a big black canvas kit bag, uh, and some straw was placed at the bottom so that it could serve as a soft bag for Toto, and he would not have any difficulty uh, while traveling to Saharanpur, right? So Toto was placed inside the bag, right? And there was possibly no way out of the bag. Why? Because it was quite impossible for Toto to tear up the lining of the uh, canvas kit bag, right? Because it was quite tough for a monkey to tear it up into pieces, right? But Toto could do only one thing, that was he could just jump inside the bag, and it could just make the bag roll and jump. And this did what? This just attracted a lot of onlookers at the station and in the train, right? When grandfather was finally at the railway station, Dehradun railway station, right? What happened? That he was at the turnstile. Turnstile is what, students? Turnstile is actually a small entrance It is a it is a small mechanical gate. You might have seen it in the parks, right? Only one person can enter it. It actually is a circular in form, right? Made of iron. So this is called turnstile, right? So at when he just crossed the turnstile, there was the ticket collector who wanted to check grandfather's ticket, right? When grandfather showed his ticket to him, all of a sudden it was Toto who just popped his head out of the bag, right? It was quite unexpected. Grandfather did not expect this, but when Toto just popped his out of the bag and he just gave the ticket collector a wide grin. Grin is a very funny laugh, right? Very funny smile. So when ticket collector all of a sudden took a look at Toto, he was just surprised, frightened. He was shocked, right? So we just now come to know that the ticket collector now asked the grandfather to pay for Toto, because Toto was now classified by the ticket collector as a dog, and the ticket collector explained it to the grandfather that the railways charge the traveling of quadrupeds, and here Toto was actually a quadruped. Quadruped here means an animal with four legs. An animal with four legs. So Toto was actually a monkey and he had four legs. So the ticket collector charged for Toto. He charged 3 rupees for Toto, and grandfather had to pay 3 rupees as a fare for Toto. So grandfather was actually very irritated with this behavior of the ticket collector, and he all of a sudden took out a tortoise from his pocket, and he just asked the ticket collector if he could charge him for this also. But ticket collector, giving him a smile, passing him a smile, said that no sir, this is not a dog, or this is not a quadruped, so we cannot just charge any fare or any fee for this tortoise. So students, with this part number 1 of the chapter number 2, the adventures of Toto, ends here, and we will read about the next part very soon, right? So students, I suggest you all to read the text so that you can understand it very well, right? So students, with this, thank you.